Ready for another deep dive? Today, we're tackling a big one. We're going to be looking at the possibility of life on
Oh,
Mars.
this is a fun one.
Yeah, and we've got some really interesting information to delve into. We'll be referencing Sciatron Alnas Amulsak.
Okay.
It explores a lot of what we know about Mars, what we don't know, and why this whole idea has gripped humanity for so long.
Right.
So we'll be talking about things like ancient rivers, possible underground lakes, and even some strange gases that have scientists scratching their heads.
Yeah.
But as always, we're not just going to throw a bunch of facts at you.
Right.
We want to step back, look at the bigger picture, and try to help you make sense of it all. So to kick things off, let's just start with the basics. Why Mars? I
Yeah.
mean, there are tons of planets out there. What makes Mars so special in the search for extraterrestrial life?
Well, I think if we're looking for life as we know it, we need to start with a planet that's at least somewhat similar to Earth, right?
Right.
And Mars, billions of years ago, was surprisingly Earth-like.
Okay, so take me back in time. What was Mars like way back when?
All right, so imagine this. Mars was warmer, wetter, with a thicker atmosphere. Evidence suggests that it had rivers and lakes, and maybe even oceans, much like Earth today.
Wow.
Scientists have even found ancient riverbeds
Hmm.
with features that suggest flowing water,
Oh, wow.
not just like, some little stagnant pools.
Yeah. Okay, so it wasn't just like a puddle here or there. There was serious water action happening.
Exactly, yeah, there was a lot of water movement.
Okay, so then what happened? How did Mars go from this potentially habitable world to the cold, dry, red planet we see today?
Well, it's kind of a story of planetary loss.
Mm-hmm.
Mars lost its magnetic field, which allowed solar winds to strip away its atmosphere over billions of years.
Ah,
And without that atmosphere, liquid water couldn't exist on the surface.
right.
Temperatures plummeted, and the planet became a much harsher place.
So it was basically a planetary makeover gone wrong.
You could say that.
Yeah.
But even though Mars went through this dramatic transformation, scientists have uncovered evidence that suggests water might still exist,
Okay.
just not in the way we're used to seeing it.
Okay, so are you talking about those underground lakes I keep hearing about?
Yes.
Tell me everything.
This is one of the most exciting areas of Mars research right now. In 2018, scientists using radar data found evidence suggesting that liquid water might be trapped beneath the surface of Mars, potentially in the form of underground lakes.
Hold on. We're not talking about little puddles here, right? These are supposed to be actual lakes hidden beneath the Martian surface.
That's right.
Yeah.
And not only would these lakes be shielded from the harsh conditions on the surface, but they could also potentially provide a haven for any microbial life that might still exist on Mars.
Okay, I'm officially hooked on the idea of Martian microbes swimming around in these secret underground lakes. But before we jump into the possibilities of life, let's talk about another piece of the puzzle that has scientists scratching their heads. Methane.
Yes. The methane mystery. Scientists have detected methane in Mars's thin atmosphere, and it's a real head-scratcher.
Yeah, I read that methane is often linked to biological processes, which is why everyone's so excited about it. But I also know that methane can have non-biological origins, right?
Right.
How do scientists even begin to distinguish between these possibilities on a planet millions of miles away?
Yeah, it's like trying to solve a puzzle, but we're missing some of the pieces.
Right?
Here on Earth, the majority of methane in our atmosphere comes from biological sources. Like certain farm animals are quite famous for their methane emissions.
Okay, so no Martian cows then.
Probably not.
Hmm.
But the presence of methane on Mars is still intriguing. It suggests that something is producing it, and that something could be either a geological process or, well, life itself.
Okay, so how do we get closer to figuring out what's producing this Martian methane? Is there any way to tell if it's coming from rocks or microbes?
Scientists are working on it. One way is to study the isotopes of carbon in the methane. Different processes like biological activity versus geological activity leave different isotopic fingerprints.
Mm-hmm.
And further analyzing the fluctuations in methane levels over time might provide clues as well.
So it's like these scientists are cosmic detectives. They're piecing together clues from millions of miles away.
Exactly.
But, okay, let's imagine for a second that Martian life does exist. What kind of life are we talking about here? Do you think it would look anything like life on Earth?
It's a question that sparks the imagination. Given the harsh conditions on Mars, it's likely that any life we find would be microbial. And it might not even resemble the microbes we're familiar with here on Earth.
Right, because I think we tend to think of life as plants and animals and things like that, but there's a whole world of like tiny organisms out there that thrive in some pretty crazy environments.
Exactly. We have extremophiles on Earth that live in boiling hot springs,
Oh, wow.
like the ones you find in Yellowstone National Park or in the incredibly salty Dead Sea.
Oh, yeah.
They've adapted to survive in places we once thought were uninhabitable.
So if those kinds of organisms exist here on Earth, it's not too wild to think that similar life forms could have evolved on Mars, especially considering its extreme environment.
Precisely. The search for life on Mars is about expanding our understanding of what's possible. We might find life that has a completely different biochemistry than what we're used to, or life that has adapted to survive in ways we can't even imagine.
Okay, so we've got these tantalizing clues like past water, potential underground lakes, and even this mysterious methane. But how do we actually find that definitive proof of life? What are the next steps in this Martian detective story?
Well, there are several exciting avenues scientists are exploring. One of the most promising is bringing Martian soil and rock samples back to Earth.
Oh, yeah, I read that NASA's Perseverance rover is already collecting samples on Mars. Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly. The plan is for a future mission to retrieve those samples and bring them back to Earth, where scientists can analyze them in sophisticated labs.
Right, because we can do so much more with a sample in a lab than we can with a rover, no matter how advanced it is. It's like having all the tools and resources you need at your fingertips versus trying to work with a limited toolkit.
Precisely. We could analyze those Martian samples for biomarkers,
Mm.
which are essentially chemical signatures or fossilized evidence that indicate the presence of past or present life.
So we're not just talking about looking for tiny green microbes under a microscope.
Not necessarily.
Hmm.
Biomarkers can be incredibly subtle. We might be looking for specific molecules or isotopic ratios that suggest biological processes were at work. It's a bit like forensic science, but on a planetary scale.
That's really cool. But what about those underground lakes we talked about? How do we even explore those? It's not like we can just send a scuba diver down there.
You're right, exploring those lakes would require some incredibly innovative technology.
Are scientists actually working on something that could explore those lakes?
Absolutely. They're developing concepts for probes that could penetrate the Martian surface and explore those subsurface environments. Imagine like a robotic submarine designed specifically for navigating an alien lake.
That's next level exploration. Okay, but let's say we did find evidence of life on Mars, even if it's just microbial. What would that mean for humanity? How do you think it would change our perspective on ourselves and our place in the universe?
That's a question that goes beyond science and delves into the realm of philosophy and even spirituality.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's one thing to imagine life on other planets in the abstract,
Right.
but it's another thing entirely to actually have proof that we're not alone in the universe.
Imagine the impact on our understanding of life itself. We've always wondered if life arose uniquely on Earth, or if it's a common phenomenon throughout the universe. Discovering life on Mars, even simple microbial life, would suggest that life might be much more prevalent than we ever thought possible.
Yeah, it would be like realizing that the Earth is just one tiny island in a vast ocean teeming with life.
Exactly. And it would raise even more profound questions. How did life arise on Mars? Is it related to life on Earth? Does it share a common origin?
It's mind-boggling to think about. But beyond the scientific implications, I imagine there would be huge cultural and societal impacts as well.
Absolutely. It would challenge our beliefs about our place in the cosmos. Are we special, or are we just one of countless life forms scattered throughout the universe?
And how would different religions and cultures interpret such a discovery? It's fascinating to think about all the different perspectives and interpretations that would emerge.
It would spark a global conversation, wouldn't it? It would force us to confront some of the biggest questions we've ever asked ourselves about the nature of life, the universe, and our place in it all.
It's a lot to wrap our heads around, but it's also incredibly exciting to think about the possibilities.
It is, and it's a reminder that we're living in a time of incredible scientific discovery. We're on the cusp of answering some of humanity's oldest and most profound questions.
Okay, before we get too lost in these existential questions, let's bring it back to the practical side of things. What are the biggest challenges we face in searching for life on Mars? And how are scientists trying to overcome them?
One of the biggest challenges is the sheer distance between Earth and Mars.
Right.
It takes a long time to get there, and communication is delayed.
Yeah.
This makes it difficult to control rovers in real time and to receive data quickly.
So it's not like we can just send a quick email to Mars and get an instant reply.
Not quite. But advancements in communication technology are helping to bridge that gap.
Hmm.
And future missions might even involve sending humans to Mars. which would allow for much more flexibility and on-the-spot decision-making.
Humans on Mars, that's straight out of science fiction, but I guess it's not as far-fetched as it used to seem. What other challenges come to mind?
Well, the Martian environment is incredibly harsh.
Right.
The atmosphere is thin, the temperatures are extreme, and there's intense radiation. This makes it difficult to design and operate spacecraft and rovers that can withstand those conditions.
It's a testament to human ingenuity that we've been able to send rovers to Mars and have them operate for years in such a challenging environment.
It's truly remarkable, and scientists are constantly developing new technologies and materials that can withstand the Martian extremes. For example, they're working on radiation shielding to protect both robotic missions and eventually human explorers.
Okay, one last question before we wrap up this part of our deep dive. Knowing all that we know about Mars, how do you think the search for life there will unfold in the coming years? What kind of breakthroughs are you most excited about?
That's a great question. I think the next decade is going to be incredibly exciting for Mars exploration. The return of those Martian samples is going to be a major milestone, and it has the potential to revolutionize our understanding of the planet's history and the possibility of past life.
And those potential missions to explore the underground lakes, that's something I'm really looking forward to. It's like a whole new frontier of exploration right here in our solar system.
It is. And who knows what we might find down there. It's a mystery waiting to be unraveled. But even if we don't find definitive proof of life in the next few years, I'm confident that we'll continue to learn more about Mars and get closer to answering that age-old question. Are we alone?
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of part 2 of our deep dive into the search for life on Mars. We've covered a lot of ground, from the intriguing evidence to the technological challenges and the profound philosophical implications of discovering extraterrestrial life. All right, so we're back for the final part of our Martian adventure. And after diving deep into all this evidence, it's hard not to feel like we're on the verge of something huge.
Yeah, it does feel that way. The pace of discovery has been accelerating.
Yeah.
And with missions like the Mars Sample Return on the horizon, we're entering like a golden age of Mars exploration.
So let's fast forward a bit. Let's say we do find undeniable proof of life on Mars, past or present. How do you think that would impact humanity? Would it be a unifying moment, or would it create like chaos and fear?
Um, it's a question that's been debated for centuries, and there's no easy answer. I suspect it would be a mix of both. On one hand, the idea that we're not alone in the universe has the potential to unite us, to make our differences here on Earth seem less significant.
Yeah, it's like that feeling you get when you look up at the night sky and you realize how vast and mysterious the universe is. Suddenly your everyday worries feel a bit smaller.
Exactly. And discovering life elsewhere could inspire a renewed sense of wonder and curiosity about our place in the cosmos. But on the other hand, it's also possible that some people would feel threatened by the idea of extraterrestrial life.
Yeah, I can see that. It would challenge our long-held beliefs about our uniqueness and maybe even raise concerns about potential threats from these unknown life forms.
Right, it's certainly a possibility. But I believe that ultimately the discovery of life on Mars would be a net positive for humanity. It would force us to confront our assumptions, to expand our understanding of what's possible, and to think about the future in new and exciting ways.
So it would be a catalyst for change both scientifically and culturally.
Absolutely. Think about the technological innovations that might emerge as we try to understand these new life forms. We might develop entirely new fields of science, new ways of thinking about energy and resources, even new forms of communication.
It's mind-blowing to think about the ripple effects that such a discovery would have.
It would be a defining moment for our species, a turning point in our history.
So do you think we'll find life on Mars? Are you optimistic?
I'm cautiously optimistic. The evidence we've discussed, the past water, the potential underground lakes, the methane, it all points to the possibility that Mars may have harbored life at some point in its history, and maybe even still does today.
And even if we don't find definitive proof of life in the near future, the exploration itself is incredibly valuable.
Absolutely. Every mission, every discovery brings us closer to understanding the origins of life, the evolution of planets, and the vastness of the universe. It's a journey worth taking, regardless of the outcome.
Well said. So as we wrap up our deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from this conversation?
I want them to leave with a sense of wonder, a sense of curiosity, and a sense of possibility. The search for life on Mars is a story that's still being written, and we're all invited to participate. Keep learning, keep exploring, and keep asking those big questions.
And who knows, maybe one day some of our listeners will be the ones making those groundbreaking discoveries.
It's certainly possible. The future of space exploration is wide open, and it's full of opportunities for anyone who dares to dream big.
Well, that's a perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey, and remember, keep looking up.